I am very pleased to say that today I can introduce gorgeous Gabon to all of you. So today we will show you the amazing opportunities Gabon has to offer to the western part of the world. And then if after this presentation you want to get to know Gabon in a more detailed way, we would gladly refer you to our research paper with the same title. Today we are going to introduce Gabon to you, and to start it off, we're going to take a look at Gabon at a glance. Then we will also have a look at the different landscapes, such as the political, the geographical, and the socio-economic landscape. Of course, then we want to show you what it is like to start a business in Gabon. So we will talk about the costs, the steps to take, and we will briefly discuss the different market opportunities as well. And we also want to talk about the cross-cultural aspects of the country. This is important because we want to give you the best chances at forming partnerships in Gabon. And we will finish this presentation with a small analysis of the government and its views on the future.
Now to start with Gabon at a glance. The capital of Gabon is Libreville, with its official language being French. There is no official religion in Gabon. However, the most dominant religion is seen as Christianity. The head of state is President Ali Ben Bongo Ondimba, with its head of government being Prime Minister Rose Christian Osuka-Raponda. Gabon doesn't really have a big population, only having a population of a mere 2.3 million inhabitants. The currency of Gabon is CFA franc, or rather the Central African franc. The GDP per capita of Gabon is actually pretty good compared to the other African countries, with a GDP per capita of around $8,000. Compared to the other African countries in Africa, that's actually pretty decent. The most dominant industries in Gabon are the petroleum industry, manganese industry, agriculture, and sustainable tourism, with the biggest industry being the petroleum industry. Just like any other flag, Gabon's flag also doesn't go without any symbolism. The green in Gabon's flag stands for the nation's forests, with the yellow being the band that divides the other two colors, as a reference to the country's positioning in the equator and the sunlight that covers the country. The blue is the sea and Gabon's coastline. Gabon's neighboring countries are Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, and Congo. Now we'll talk about the political landscape. The government type in Gabon is a presidential republic that can be divided into three branches: an executive, legislative, and judicial branch. The country also has 12 political parties, with PDG, or rather the Gabonese Democratic Party, being the most dominant. The president of Gabon also is the leader of the PDG party, or the Gabon's Democratic.
So now I'm going to talk about the geographical landscape of Gabon. Gabon is a country located along the African west coast in the Central African region. It has 3,261 kilometers of international boundaries. The country is neighbored by the Atlantic Ocean and the other countries such as Cameroon, the Republic of the Congo, and the Equatorial Guinea. It has the highest point, so the highest point in Gabon would be the Mont Bengué. It also lies on the equator in the world map. It is very rich in natural resources, so it is one of the African countries which is uniquely gifted by the nature. The weather is tropical and hot and humid all year. 85% of the country is covered by the forest. So here I'm going to talk about the demographic situation in Gabon. The population is around 2.3 million of people, and as you can see on the pyramid graph that it illustrates the age and the sex of the population. It's actually from 2020. It also gives like kind of an insight into the economic development and the social stability in the country. The population is very relatively young, because the life expectancy is very low, so people die a bit earlier than the world average. It's around 53 years old, so people tend to die easily. And you can also see the ratio of gender. So the men and women are nearly equally split. It's also very attractive to come and migrate to Gabon, because since 1960s there was an oil discovery, and the neighbor countries have been coming, and they have migrated to actually live there as a slum and like in a poverty life, even though there's like a lot of revenues coming through oil production and everything. As I have mentioned before, 85% of the Gabonese land is full of forest, so people tend to have people live in the cities. So 4 out of 5 people live in the cities, and especially in Libreville and Port. Libreville is actually the capital. Their biggest religion is Christianity, but biggest ethnic groups are called Fang people, which are more than 500,000 people of its population. So education has become one of the most important things for every country since years. It can be very crucial for the country's economic and social development. The education system in Gabon is related to a French model. The system is evolving over time, and the school is mandatory for every children aged between 6 and 16, which is in French, since they all speak French. And so they have divided the educational system into 4 sections, which are primary education, secondary education, which is general and technical institutions, private and public schools, and then you have vocational education, and then lastly tertiary education, which is like universities and higher schools.
As for business, Gabon is ranked 169 among the 190 economies in the ease of doing business rank. As for the score, it scores 45 out of 100. On this scale, we clearly see that the ease of doing business is low compared to other European or Asian countries. But on the part of starting a business, it scores 87, which is quite high given that the average score in Africa is 40 compared to 73 in OECD countries. Knowing this, Gabon is continuously improving the ease of doing business conditions and attracting foreign investors. The most common way to start up a business in Gabon is to set up private limited liability company, simplified public limited company, or public limited company. The private limited liability company is the preferred type of business to form a small business in Gabon, since such business only requires 1 director and 1 shareholder, and there is no minimum share capital required. However, an auditor must be hired if the overall balance sheet surpasses the given budget of 125 million Gabonese franc, or the yearly turnover crosses the limit of 250 million Gabonese franc, or the number of employees goes above 50. As for the simplified public limited company, a minimum of 1 shareholder is required, and it is free to decide their management structure. However, it should consist of at least 1 chairperson. This type of business is also required to hire a legal auditor when 2 out of 3 conditions from the private limited liability company are met. Lastly, for the public limited company to be registered are only essential 1 shareholder and 1 director. But if in any case the company has over 3 shareholders, a board of directors is then mandatory. There are different factors that need to be taken in consideration before setting up a company in Gabon, such as each city and region has its own separate law, which could impact the cost, the availability, and the ease of doing business. All companies are asked to pay the fee for ANP Gabon process, which approximately values 475,000 Gabonese franc, and in euro it will be around 727 euros. Plus, there is an optional cost for getting the registration on the same day of 459 euros for a private limited liability company and 764 euros for a public limited company. To start a public limited company, for instance, the legal required capital is a minimum of 14,860 euros. As for the private limited liability company, the minimum paid up share to complete the setup of the business with the local company registrar is around 1,610 euros.
So now that we've seen the best ways to start a business in Gabon, let's take a look at the market opportunities and the best prospect sectors in the country. First of all, we have the extractive industries, including production of petroleum, manganese, and wood. In 2021, Gabon was the world's third largest producer of manganese, and in the same year, 80% of exports came from the oil sector and also accounted for 45% of the total GDP. With that, 1.5 million cubic meters of wood was also produced in the same year. And this last industry is especially interesting because it helps the Gabonese economy through diversification of its markets. And now on top of that, there is a certified Gabonese Ukume plywood that is being released and sold in Europe, which guarantees to have the wood be produced in an ecological and responsible way. Also for the extractive industries, Gabon also rejoined the EYTY. In the full name is the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, after being delisted in 2013. With this initiative, they want to commit to transparency along the whole extractive industry value chain, which is very important for the sustainability of all economic markets. The Gabon rejoining is an especially positive step towards economic equality, also environmental management of the industry, and sustainable development within the whole country. Then we also have agriculture. In 2021, the same year as the other things, a bill was approved that will support local agricultural production. Through this bill, agri-food companies in the country, they are obliged to have local producers and as suppliers, such as in markets and supermarkets as well. And then finally, we have sustainable tourism. Gabon has beautiful natural resources, and to protect this in 2021, Gabon received money for the Central African Forest Initiative to protect national parks and forests. With this, they want to reduce deforestation and lower carbon emissions. And they actually got money from Norway to support this initiative as well. Gabon is already considered a global leader in climate action due to its long-standing commitment to preserving the untouched natural environment, such as the parks and the forests. And it will continue to do so as it became the first country to also receive payments based on the results of reducing forest emissions. So it's known for its sustainability and its commitment to climate action. So sustainable tourism is in the perfect spot in Gabon.
Gabon has one of the most attractive tax regimes in Africa, making it an ideal destination for business owners looking to establish their operations within its borders. The Gabon taxation system is based on the French tax model and consists of a combination of direct taxes such as corporate income tax, personal income tax and value-added taxes, and also indirect taxes such as import duties.
To do business in the country, foreign companies must register with Gabon's Ministry of Trade and Industry. This includes filing paperwork such as articles of incorporation, a certificate of good standing from the home country, and other related documents. Moreover, a business license is required for most types of businesses operating in Gabon, including retail stores, restaurants, and professional services firms. The application process typically requires submitting various forms, along with the proof that you have registered your company with the government. All businesses are required by law to hire local workers if they wish to operate in Gabon. The company will need then to obtain work permits for all employees and ensure that it is compliant with local labor laws. Gabon has several labor laws in place to protect the rights of workers. This includes minimum wage requirements, working hours regulations, and safety standards. Additionally, employers must provide certain benefits such as maternity leave, health insurance, and vacation time. Employers are also required to withhold taxes from the employees' wages and remit them to the government on a regular basis. Business in Gabon must comply with environmental regulations regarding pollution control and waste management. Additionally, businesses that import or export goods must obtain necessary permits from the Ministry of Trade and Industry. All the companies must ensure that they are compliant with the applicable laws and regulations in order to remain operational in Gabon.
The unemployment rate in Gabon was 22.3% as of 2021, according to the World Bank's Global Economic Monitor report. This is higher than the average sub-Saharan African unemployment rate due to the economy's reliance on the oil industry, which produces few opportunities, as well as labor legislation rigidity and skills mismatch. In terms of employment structure, most jobs in Gabon are concentrated in services, followed by industry and then agriculture. Furthermore, more than half of all the jobs are informal, with many workers engaged as independent contractors or self-employed entrepreneurs without any protection from labor laws or social security benefits. Business etiquette in Gabon is formal and hierarchical. First of all, you should always respect the elderly and those in a position of authority. This is very important in Gabon. Next is being punctual. It is not appreciated if you come late to a business meeting. Always be dressed appropriately and address people with respect. Try to maintain a professional demeanor at all times. Be patient and understanding, as some procedures can take some time. At all times, you should be aware of religious and cultural norms. Also, language and communication styles should be researched upon. Usually, communication is direct and open, with people often speaking in a loud and animated manner. Show appreciation for hospitality, as this is highly valued in Gabon. Visitors are often welcomed with open arms. The exchange of business cards is a very common practice in Gabon.
And finally, the government analysis is very short and brief, but it will give a good idea of the future. The government is currently prioritizing economic diversification and also improving the workforce to improve its general business climate. And we see that the last one was especially important since the country is currently facing a 33% poverty rate. To reduce poverty, they created a new social policy based on three important pillars that we also see on the screen. The first one being creating income generating opportunities for the poor and social classes, making sure that they have jobs as well, and also reducing the gap in access to basic public services, and finally establishing integrated social programs for the most exposed. We see that the government still has a long way to go, but they are improving so much and trying their best, and we see that the business opportunities are definitely there